So today we will be discussing some of these issues that hit close to home for all of us. Family from Elk Grove, whose son and brother, Sergeant First Class and husband, Sergeant First Class Bryan Hall. He was killed in action in Iraq in 2009. We will also be discussing matters of entrepreneurship with veterans and how this holds real potential in addressing the issues of unemployment for veterans of all generations across the country. So that'll be on the second half of the hour. In the first half of the program, I have with me the family of the Halls. I have Betty Hall in the studio with us, and on the phone we have her daughter and brother of Bryan Hall, Christy Hall, on the phone. Say good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
Hello.
All right, so everything works. We can hear everyone. And the Hall family suffered the quintessential nightmare of these campaigns in Iraq and Afghanistan. In April of 2009, her son Bryan Hall of Elk Grove was one of the soldiers who, at risk to his own life, he saved several of his fellow soldiers in Iraq, Iraqi civilians. And but in the process of that conflict on that day, he paid the ultimate sacrifice with others in his unit. And so obviously this has a grave impact on how it affects family and society. And we all hear these things and we say, you know, it's a terrible thing to happen. But in here we have the family with us. And so let's share a little bit about the Hall family. We'll start with Betty. Tell us about the Hall family. Are you guys local, always lived in the Sacramento area?
Yes, we've always lived here. As a matter of fact, I was born and raised here in Sacramento. And we lived in the same house the whole time. So Bryan grew up right here.
Right. So Bryan is a native. Christy, you're also native. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah. So, you know, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very rare entity in California, period. We've got two generations of California natives right here. And so the family was contended with the ultimate in receiving news. Describe the day when you learned of this incident that claimed the life of Sergeant Hall.
Well, I'll talk first. I'm Bryan's mom. Actually, Christy had been moving from home over to Folsom, and we were shopping in Ross. There's a plug for Ross, right? And my neighbor called me, and she said that there were two uniformed Army officers standing on our front porch. And, you know, you hope for the best, but those guys don't come to tell you that your son's a great soldier, you know?
And for those that don't know, there is a significance between soldiers that appear at your doorstep if they're in dress uniform versus a duty uniform. And me having been wounded, when my wife got the news, she got the phone call from my commander before anybody even showed up. But when somebody did show up at the door, they were in a duty ACU Army uniform. So there is a distinction in that, and obviously that is out of respect for the fallen service member and being of aid and comfort to the family. So sorry to interrupt you, but I just wanted to give that to the folks that don't necessarily understand the significance of that. So you got home, you did get to meet up with them, I assume, at this point, and you were, as you said, prepared for the worst?
We were prepared for the worst. My husband drove home like an Indy car race driver that day, and of course I was sitting in the back seat sobbing the whole time because I just had the feeling that that's what it was all about. But
and Christy, you were with them at this when this happened too, right?
Yeah, I was with them shopping actually for stuff for the house, and it felt like a movie because you've seen those movies where you see the men in dress uniforms and you know ultimately what it is, but you don't want to believe it. So just everything felt like slow motion.
Right.
Even though my father was driving absolutely crazy when he is the slowest driver of all time, but it just felt like we were going in slow motion. It felt like we were in a movie, like it wasn't real.
I got you. So go ahead and continue, Betty, with the rest of you guys got there.
We got there. We were able to get a hold of Rachel, Bryan's wife. And so by the time the Army men returned, there was a large crowd at our house, friends, family, neighbors, everyone.
Right.
And, of course, they delivered the news and immediately went into action. A casualty assistance officer met with us privately in another room and made the arrangements for the trip to Dover. We were one of the first families to go to Dover.
Mm-hmm.
So he had told us, be ready at 6 a.m. We don't know for sure when we'll be leaving, but we will leave.
Right.
So,
and that's Dover Air Force Base in Delaware, which is the arrival station for all fallen U.S. service members from Iraq and Afghanistan. We're on the air this morning with Betty and Christy Hall. They are local members of the community here out of Elk Grove. Their son and brother, Sergeant First Class Bryan Hall, was killed in Iraq in April of 2009. And so the casualty assistance officer got you guys squared away, and I don't want to rush you through the story, but I also want to get into the fruits that have been born from this tragedy with the time that we have left. So you got to Dover, you accepted Brian's body or remains, and so did he get buried at Arlington, or did you bring him back to California? What did the family do?
we brought him back to California. In fact, he's buried not far from our home.
Okay. And so they gave him full military honors at the service.
It was amazing. Actually, the community of Elk Grove just pitched in, and when Bryan was brought home, the fire department put him on the top of a fire truck and brought him from the airport. When we dropped into the city of Elk Grove, there were literally thousands of people on the sidewalks welcoming home.
And you were telling me before we got on the air this morning how, Elk Grove being a city of 150-ish thousand people, it's still a very small town community for those that have lived there a while and know each other. So that had to have been very heartening.
It was. It was amazing. It was very heartwarming to us. We were shocked.
Yeah. What did you think, Christy?
It felt great to know that we had the support of not just our close friends, but we had the whole community behind us. Bryan was my only sibling, so for me, my family is very important to me. So I have thousands of friends who, were there standing, holding flags, crying with me, supporting us, which was great.
Christy, was Bryan your older or little brother?
He was an older brother.
Older brother. So definitely some mixed feelings there. I have a younger sister, too, so I remember the days of growing up and having contests about who could get away with being beaten up without crying, testing the waters.
I definitely bugged him enough to where he beat me up.
Right. So it's a great idea. So, Christy, as I understand it, Betty was kind of passing some of the credit on to you, so I'm going to start with you. We're coming into the third year of a program called Walk to Remember. And for those that are interested, there's Walk to Remember Bryan Hall, and that's Bryan with a Y. Walk to Remember BryanHall.com. And you guys started a scholarship fund, which in part benefits his young daughter, Addison, but you've also created a broader scholarship fund. And what seeded this idea, and tell us a little bit about the scholarship and its charter.
Well, I knew that when Bryan passed away that I wanted to leave a legacy. I wanted people to remember him even after I passed. And being a teacher, I knew that I wanted to educate my students on the importance of supporting our troops overseas as well as when they come home. So I thought the best way to do that is to do an annual walk, easy for every person. It's not a run where it has to be pressured or timed. It's just a day for people to come out to honor our past heroes, the ones that have died, or those that are still serving and currently serving. I wanted people to be able to know that they can come out and support of our family as well as all those who may be overseas. And I wanted to do something in honor of Addie, but I also wanted to do something that honored high school seniors so that they have the opportunity to further their education. And for my students in my classroom, they know what they're well aware of the scholarship that they can possibly go for in high school. But I wanted it to tie in with education. I know Bryan, when he graduated, he went right into the military. And so I want people to realize whether they go in the military or they go to a college, a JC, or a four-year school, that it's important to further your education, and it's also important to be able to support Addie, whether she wants to go to school or if it's something that she chooses later on to do, to be able to have that fund there for her. I want to raise enough money so that everything that Bryan would have paid for, college, wedding, etc., all of those items will be paid for through this walk, so that every person who goes to the walk or donates is having a part of Addison's future.
Right. And then the broader context of the scholarship in terms of benefiting high school seniors, is this something that assists in their first year of embarking into college or trade school?
Yeah, it's a $1,000 scholarship that is awarded to them to be used towards textbooks or for their units, etc.
I gotcha. Okay. So now in the third year into it, how many high school students have earned this scholarship as they've exited high school and continued on to college?
Our first year we gave out 2 scholarships, and last year we gave out 1. And in hopes this year with a lot of participants, we're able to give out 2.
Okay, great. So we're on the air with Betty Hall and Christy Hall, mother and sister to Sergeant First Class Bryan Hall. They started a scholarship fund, the Walk to Remember Scholarship Fund, which benefits high school seniors in the local area. Is this primarily for Elk Grove students, I take it, that benefit from this? And right, go ahead. And so we're now the third year into this, and you have seen growing numbers of support. Betty, you are organizing this year's Walk to Remember based on all the paperwork I have here. I mean, it says for information, call Betty. Email Betty, talk to Betty. You guys have been able to get support from lots of entities. One of the most notable ones is Outback Steakhouse. Throws a bunch of meat on the grill for people to enjoy during the event. This year's event is on Saturday, April 14th. And for information, you can look at either log into walktorememberbryanhall.com. And we'll have a link on the veteranradio.us website as well, because that is a bit of a mouthful. And so the scholarship benefits Elk Grove seniors. Tell us about how the organization is going this year, Betty.
It's going well. We do have some more sponsors. And, of course, Outback is just amazing. They are so generous and so supportive of the event and put on such a nice meal. But it's going well. And we're looking forward to increasing our numbers again.
Good. Well, go ahead, Christy.
I'm sorry. My goal this year, the first year we had the walk was 700 participants. Last year we had about 500. And my goal this year is to have 1,000. I want to be able to have enough people participate or enough donations given so that we're able to increase our scholarship amount as well as the amount of scholarships that we give out to high school seniors.
That's a good plan. So that's quite a goal you've set for yourself, Christy and Betty. What have you guys done? And obviously we have you here on the radio, so hopefully that'll spark some interest as well. But what else have you done to get the word out so that people know and can be engaged and interested in this, in this program?
I actually started a Facebook page where I have a few hundred people on. And I also went through, I have a really good friend of mine, Nikki, who has been sending out to radio stations a press release to Good Day Sacramento, to other different avenues, newspapers, etc. We're not sure where to go besides online, so we're looking for anyone who would be willing to help to spread the word, whether it be the website or the Facebook page.
Great. And, and then radio on a Sunday morning for folks that are either on their way to church or breakfast or wherever is always a good avenue also. So this is Veteran Radio. We're on the air with Betty Hall, Christy Hall. They are running a scholarship called Walk to Remember Bryan Hall, and it's in memoriam of Sergeant First Class Bryan Hall, who was killed in Iraq in April of 2009. And his family came out of the tragedy and created this scholarship to benefit high school seniors who might have even known Bryan Hall. I'm assuming that you've had many in your circles, Christy, that knew him when they were in school as well. Is that correct?
Yes. A lot of his friends will participate in the walk as well as their children.
And what about you, Betty? You're being awfully silent, so let's get you on the air. You got the headphones on and everything. So share some of your organizational things, some of the impressions that you have for this year versus years past.
Well, I'm kind of a behind-the-scenes worker here. like you say, people respond to me through the emails and the phone calls and so forth.
What is your
Christy,
email address if somebody has a question for you?
It's bettymhall@aol.com.
Okay. And so they have entry forms. You can also register through the website. Is that correct?
Absolutely. The registration forms are right on the website.
And registration for an individual is a donation of $25?
That's correct.
And is it different if they show up on site?
It is.
Okay.
It's then $30.
Okay.
We
And-
try to keep the fee low so that it's affordable for people, and the whole day is just so patriotic that it's such a good lesson for not only adults but young children to see all of this that's going on. The Sheriff's Honor Guard opens it with posting the colors. There are members of the Patriot Guard who come and form a flag line to start the march.
Okay, the Patriot Guard Riders. Yeah, that's always good. Hope it doesn't rain.
I know,
Yeah.
I know. And then we have a band, and we have singers. We and it's fun. It's a big festival.
So this whole thing gets started on April 14th. What time does the whole thing kick off?
It kicks off at 10 o'clock, and registration opens at 9 a.m.
And it'll go until
they finish walking.
they finish walking, have had something to eat, and
Yes.
decide to go home.
Right.
So hopefully it'll be a beautiful day. Christy, any parting thoughts as we wind down here into the last minute or so of the interview?
Well, I appreciate you guys taking the time to put us on the air, but I also do want to say a big thank you to Fallen Warriors, to the Running Zone in Elk Grove, Seroptimus, the Jump RS, Stritzla's Flowers, Wells Fargo, and Starbucks, because without them, as well as Outback, without them, this event would not be possible. So with the support of our community and all of our donors, we are extremely grateful.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Betty and Christy, for joining us on the air this morning. It's a local cause. It has direct effect on our local communities, especially with the folks down in Elk Grove. And that is walktorememberbryanhall.com. That's Bryan with a Y for those that are spelling challenged like me. We will also have a link to this website through veteranradio.us as well. That'll be going up here later in the week. So, Betty and Christy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very, very much.